Prom sucks. Well, at least it used to suck. I know my prom sure sucked, and most of the people I was friends with, theirs sucked too, or maybe they didn't even go. So the question as a youth pastor that I had to ask was, does our youth group have an alternative to that? I'm gonna tell you the story of my own prom, and more importantly, I'm gonna tell you the story about what we did as youth pastors in our church. What are the kinds of questions that we should ask as the church as a whole and as the church as individual people? So I hope you'll stay to the end. My wife Raquel and I have been doing kind of alternative fringe type ministry for the entirety of our 35 years together. It's been something that we both dedicated our lives to. It's something that we were very committed to. And we were youth pastors, we were pastors, we started a bunch of churches, we taught other people how to start churches. It's just been a wild adventure. Along the ways, we came up with a lot of stories, as you can imagine. And on Sundays, I just tell those stories. I think that you may enjoy these stories. So if you do, hit follow. Every Sunday I put out a new one. So I hope you'll join us. And for sure, talk to us in the comments. A long time ago in a high school far, far away, there was a student named the Rev. Well, he wasn't named the Rev yet, but he was a student at Notre Dame Catholic High School in the land of the dirt people. He didn't fit in at all. Most of the people were into classic rock, into southern rock, Neil Young and Leonard Skinner and Creedence Clearwater Revival, and maybe some of the more wild people got into Van Halen, but I was a punk rocker, man. I hated school. They all hated me, and I really wanted to, with my friends, the public school, that's where I wanted to be. But I was here, and it was horrible. Our hero, me, was so excited. I was anticipating this amazing event. Not so much. I didn't really want to go. I didn't really think I'd fit in. And to be honest, there was a lot of downsides to it. The prom was like a rite of passage, but really, it was just the cherry on top of the shit sandwich that was my high school years. You know what? Everyone does it. I'll just go and try to have a good time. So I try to psych myself up for it. And this is the problem, man. The tickets were for couples only. So if you didn't have a date, you really couldn't go unless you could talk a friend into going with you. But no same-sex friends. That wasn't allowed. It was expensive, man. It wasn't just the tickets, but on top of that, you had to go to a nice dinner at a nice restaurant. You had to rent a tux or buy a suit. If you were a gal, you had to buy a fancy new dress. You had to buy corsages and boutonnieres. You had to get a limo to take you there. You had to spend money for a hotel suite so you could go have a party afterwards. You usually had to drive way out of town. I mean, by the end of the day, you were gonna spend hundreds of dollars. And in those days, that was a lot of money. A couple $100, that was a ton of money. Prom was hard for us, man. We didn't have the money. A lot of us didn't have dates. I had a girlfriend, I had a job, I had some money. I figured, oh, I could do this. It's gonna suck. It's gonna spend a lot of money. And then, do I wanna spend this much money on a cherry for the top of a Sunday that I didn't want to eat? And what did this pile of money buy you? Entrance into adulthood, right? Not really. Yeah, it's not really that. You got to spend too much money to go somewhere that you didn't like, to listen to music that you didn't like, to wear clothes that you didn't like, to spend an entire night with people you didn't like. It didn't seem like it was a good deal, but man, I'm gonna try. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna force myself to do something that I had no desire to do because, well, everyone did it. Now, there was no way I was getting a limo. I didn't want to be in a limo. I definitely didn't want to be stuck in a car with a bunch of people that I didn't really get along with that much. I didn't want to spend all that money. And the other thing is you're kind of stuck with them, because if you go with them, you got to come home with them, right? So if they stay late, if they go out partying, whatever they do, you're stuck with them all night long. And that just wasn't my thing, man. And so I didn't want to get a limo, but I had a friend. Tony had a Pontiac Firebird that was so cool. And I said, hey, Tony, say no. I expect you to say no, but maybe you would lend me the Pontiac Firebird for my prom. And he was so cool. He's like, yeah, John, I know what it's like, man. You got the car. Don't worry about it. Go have a good time. I talked to Karen and said, hey, you want to go to the prom? And she was so happy. And she was a junior, so you're only allowed to go to the prom if you're a junior. I went out and got fitted for a tux. She went out and got fitted for a new dress. She was so excited. Oh my God, John, this dress is so beautiful. I can't wait to show it to you. And I'm just envisioning what I would think was a cool dress. Decided we're gonna go to a steak and seafood restaurant, fancy stuff, and get a bunch of food that was overpriced and at the time I didn't really like. So the night comes. I go to her house. I'm greeted at the door by a guy who's just as tall as me, 6'2", but he had at least 100 pounds on me. He was a big, rough-looking construction worker type dude, and he didn't seem too happy with me at all. And before Karen came out, he said, I expect her home at 1 o'clock and not a second later. Yeah, he was serious. Karen walks out. Her mom's behind her. Her mom's crying. Her hair was done up so perfectly, and she's walking out so proud of herself and so happy, and this huge smile on her face. And she gets in front of me and she does this little twirl so I can see the dress that she was so excited about. And yeah, I looked at the dress. It was rose colored, rose colored. Yeah, and it had big puffy sleeves and ruffles around the bottom. I didn't like the dress, but I said, wow, you look so beautiful, which wasn't a lie. The wow, it wasn't really a lie, but the smile on my face made it a lie, And that dress is amazing. Now, I didn't say that dress is amazingly awful. I didn't say that. I said it's amazing. I'm being a good boyfriend. I pinned the corsage on her dress and not her chest. We took off. Her mom, her dad were emotional. They were excited. They were taking pictures. Every time her dad looked at me, his expression changed and he looked like a murderer. But we left. We drove to the dinner place. I ordered a steak. I don't remember what she ordered. And yeah, my steak was overcooked and the salad was so plain. The twice baked potato, well, that was actually pretty good. I like that one. It was over $100. And back then that was a lot of money for dinner. And we didn't buy any alcohol, which we weren't allowed to. We didn't buy dessert. And we drive to the prom. And we walk in and oh my gosh, it was so decorated with the cheesiest, ugly shit you can imagine. The band was horrible. They not only were not a good band, but the music they played was pop music. It was new wave music. It was just, Euro dance crap. It was awful. I hated it. But I did like to dance. So me and Karen, we were dancing, and I had some good fun dancing. But overall, man, I just didn't want to be there. And you get all the popular kids that they fill out their suits good and they look so nice. And the rest of us, it's like, look, a James Bond outfit just doesn't look that good on an awkward, pimply-faced kid. You know what I'm saying? The girls, it was like an 80s caricature, man. It's like big hair, even bigger shoulder pads, and bright fluorescent colors everywhere. It was ridiculous. Now, I had about 6 friends in high school, just 6. And we weren't great friends except for a couple, and most of them were there. So we stood around and talked a little bit, but we'd made a plan that afterwards we're just gonna go to the beach and we're gonna have a fire and they're gonna drink and I'm gonna watch them drink, you know. So we left early and we were going to the beach, and they had this secret beach place that was secluded and private. And I was gonna have fun, you know. I figured I'd watch them get drunk and act like idiots, which was always good fun. And I'd, put a blanket down and maybe make out with Karen a little bit. You know, it was gonna be good. So we got on the road. In less than 5 minutes, they lost me completely. I had no idea where I was at or where I was going. So I was just lost. I was out in the middle of nowhere. I didn't even know how to get home. It took me like a half hour to figure out how to get home. So we just drove home. We drove around for a while looking for their spot, and we found one perfect spot. There was nobody there. It was dark. And so we got back seat, and we weren't there 5 minutes before we hear this bam, bam, bam on the window, and it scared the hell out of us. It's a cop. He shines his flashlight on us. He says, "What are you doing?" Well, it's kind of obvious what we're doing, don't you think? I said, "Hey, we just came back from our prom and we thought we'd just, spend a little alone time together." I'm thinking, he's a guy. He's a macho cop guy. He's gonna respect the bro code, right? Nah, man. He says, "I'm gonna come back in 5 minutes. And if you're still here," and then I don't remember all the different threats, but he gave all these threats, and it was like, I'm gonna wind up in jail and this and that. And I didn't really believe him. I was just like, yeah, screw this guy. When he leaves, I'm just gonna stay here. And then all of a sudden, I saw this picture. This picture just popped into my head. 285-pound construction worker with a really angry look on his face, picking his daughter up at the police station. So we got in the car and we started driving, and I said, "Hey, Karen, I'm sorry the way everything went, but there's not a lot of time before your curfew. Let's just get you home, and then your dad won't be upset with us." And so we went home. And as being the good gentleman I was, I walked her to the door. I said, "Hey, Karen, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry the way this night turned out. I was hoping for something better. I had fun anyways. I liked being with you." I was lying. I hated the night, and, it just wasn't fun for me at all. But, I did like her. And so, she just smiled and she leaned in and she started kissing me passionately. And I'm just thinking, her dad might have a gun. And if he doesn't have a gun, I know he's got hammers. And I don't want to be making out with his daughter when he looks out the window. So I just pulled back real quick and I smiled and I said, "It was a great night. I'll see you next week, okay?" And she smiled. I gave her a peck and I took off. And that was the biggest waste of money I think I've ever had at least in my senior year. My prom sucked. Nothing good about that night. And now I'm a youth pastor, and I'm looking at the kids in my youth group, and some of them were cool kids, but most of the kids, they were like me, man. They didn't really play with the popular crowd. They were a bit weird. They were into alternative music and whatnot, and they didn't want to go to the prom, some of them, and some of them thought it was stupid and they weren't going to go, and others didn't have the money to go, and some didn't have a partner to go with. And so I said to my wife, "Hey, this is going on." And I remember my prom was horrible. These kids don't have enough money. They don't have partners. It's not going to work for them. But I kind of think it's important. What do you think we could do? So we thought about it, and yeah, it was probably my wife. She comes up with all the good ideas. But she said, what if we did like a prom that was different? It was totally different. And I said, "An anti-prom." And she goes, "Yeah, that would be perfect." And so we started thinking about it, and we came up with all these ideas, and we're like, "Hey, let's see if we can pull this off." And so we went to the pastor and the elders board, and we said, "Hey, we got this idea to provide a prom for the Christian kids. or the kids that don't have money, the kids that don't fit in, the kids that don't have dates. We want to provide something for the people that just don't want to go to prom or can't. And we want to provide something for them. And the pastor, I knew he was going to be okay with it. I knew he's going to be excited about it. But even the elders, which, if I'm honest, didn't like me very much, they were on board. And they said, this is a great idea. Let's even give a couple $100 to help support this. And I was just like, wow, okay, so we're off and running. And then the next Sunday and the Sunday after and the Sunday after, they announced from the pulpit, hey, we're going to be doing this event and we need chaperones and we need kitchen help and we need people to set up and to tear down. And if you can be a part of this, this would be a great way to serve our community. And so now we've got a team of people that are all ready to help us. And, we're excited. The truth is we only had 30 kids in our youth group. And 10 of the kids, they were in junior high, So we only had 20 high schoolers. And we're planning this big event. We didn't know what to do, but we were talking and I said, hey, I got an idea. Why don't we just make a list of every shitty thing about prom and then figure out how we could do something that's different or better. So the first thing I said was dress code. They gotta wear tuxes and fancy suits and expensive dresses. We all like the idea of dressing up, but we didn't want it to be a burden. So what we set the dress code as, thrift store formal. And we encouraged the kids to just go crazy, buy whatever weird outfit they wanted, but it just, guys had to wear a jacket of some sort, and gals had to wear, formal attire of some sort. And we were a little ahead of our time, and we didn't tell the girls they had to wear dresses. Expensive dinner, we didn't want to do that. So you go out, no. At the Anti-Prom, we'll make dinner and it's included in the price. Couples only? Nah, we weren't doing that. You could only buy a single person ticket. Seniors only, it's senior prom. Well, this is the Anti-Prom, so we said anybody who's in high school, they're welcome. After parties, well, we can't really do anything about that. If they want to go somewhere and do whatever they want to do, we can't really stop them from doing that. But what if we just made it really cool to stay there? Crappy music? Well, we did concerts and we did church services where we had rock bands play. And so we just asked the kids, hey, which were your favorite bands? Which were the bands that you'd like to see again? And I called them up and I said, hey guys, we're doing this thing. We don't have any money. What money comes in, we'll definitely kick some in, but we're doing this Anti-Prom. Do you want to be a part of it? And you know what? Every band we asked said yes. It was cool. So we had 6 bands that the kids really wanted to see. We got a DJ who was gonna play music that the kids would have fun listening to. And the headliner was this really cool band that everybody liked called Javelina Rail Company. All of the kids in our youth group and all the kids in town seemed to like them a lot. The prom king and queen? Nah, man, we ain't doing that. So what we did instead is we had a bunch of prizes that people could vote for, but they were things like who wore the coolest outfit and who was the best disco dancer and who was the best new wave dancer and who was the nicest person there. And we had all these awards, and you know what? The bands, they actually gave merchandise so we could give out as prizes, not some plastic crown to put on your head for 2 people in the whole building. Nah, man, people were getting t-shirts and CDs, hats. It was great. They're voting for these prizes that we could give people. No prom king and queen. This is the Anti-Prom, man. So we made flyers. We told all our kids, look, tell everybody that there's not going to be a church service. There's not going to be worship music. I'm not going to do an altar call. We just want to get together and have some fun. So anybody's welcome. Come on in. And it's only going to be $10. We wound up with considerably over 100 kids there. We had a youth group of 20 high schoolers And we wind up with well over 100 kids there. And we, we didn't expect that. And the cool thing is they all showed up and they were all dressed up. That was the one thing we were unsure about. Are the kids actually going to dress up? And they did. They were in the coolest clothes. The gals were in flapper dresses, 50s poodle skirts, and all kinds of like trippy hippie dresses and stuff. It was great. And the guys were wearing like leisure suits from the 70s. It was so cool. You know, a couple of guys had some like old school tuxedos, you know, the light blue with the ruffles and all that bit. It was awesome. And because they dressed up, they got into it. They came to have a good time and they were awesome. It was so good. So we got this whole church full of all these really fun kids that were dressed up and ready to have a good time. And my wife and I, we got up on stage. I was wearing an electric blue zoot suit with the hat and the long feather and the chain hanging down past my knee. And my wife, she had short hair and all curled up in a 20 style. She had a green flapper dress with all the, you know, the frills all over it. And we go up on stage and we welcome everybody. We're so glad you're here. We're gonna have a good time tonight. If you need anything, come let us know. If some of the people that maybe gave you a flyer, if you see them and you wanna ask for something, just go ahead. We're here to have a good time tonight. The only thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pray for dinner. Everyone bowed their heads. I said a super short prayer and into dinner we went. Chicken scampi. It was amazing. And I know it was amazing because even though I was too busy to go and sit down and eat with everybody, at the end of the night, I was starving. I went and I had some, and oh my God, it was great, even cold. So they had a great meal, garlic bread, everything. And then the dessert trays that we had in the cafe, and they had cheesecake and brownies and all kinds of stuff, you know, not fancy frilly stuff, fun stuff that the kids actually wanted to eat, you know, candy bars, the whole bit. That was free. The dinner was part of the ticket price. And so then they went down into the lounge room and they're sitting in chairs and they're drinking their coffee and eating their snacks, and these bands are playing that they really liked. And the people that didn't want to go in the lounge, they're upstairs and there's disco dancing and Gloria Gaynor and the Bee Gees and the Village People, and they're just having a great time. They started playing this Euro dance music stuff and everyone's dancing. They even played some big band music. It was a blast. Everyone was dancing. And then at the very end of the night, we put Javelina up on stage and they just tore it up. There's something about bands that are having a good time that they just play better. And all the bands downstairs, they were having a great time. And Javelina was having a great time. And the DJ was having a great time. So the kids had a great time. All night long, the volunteers, the cooks, the chaperones, the bands, they just kept coming up to my wife and I and thanking us for putting this on. They had such a good time. And the kids, the kids just couldn't stop raving about how much of a good time they had. So at the end of the night, we're all kind of, you know, the kids all left and we're just standing around. It's like 1:30, 2 in the morning, and we got to clean up, but we're patting each other on the back. Oh, we did a good job. And that's the only real mistake. That's the only real down thing that happened that night. We were so busy patting ourselves on the back that we didn't really get the cleaning done as good as it should have been. I mean, we were tired and bleary-eyed, but there's no excuse. We should have taken care of that a little bit better. And for the first time in my life, I saw Pastor Buddy not be that happy. His face was this weird mixture of anger, but also pride. He was proud about what we did. It was kind of weird. He, in no uncertain terms, explained to me how we had an obligation to make sure the church was clean for the next service. And we didn't do that. So yeah, that was the big mistake. But the truth is, that night was a huge success. And the kids in our city, they were so happy that a church actually did something for them without trying to convert them, without trying to get them to come to their youth group. They did something for them just because they loved them. That became our reputation. The Anti-Prom was a huge hit, but it all started with a question. How can we be something of value for our community? And I think as Christians, and I think as the Christian church, we need to be asking those kind of questions. How are we affecting change in our city? Who needs a friend? How can we provide something for the homeless people? Here's a question. Jesus hung out with prostitutes. What could we do that a prostitute could come and feel welcome? Those are the big questions. But the church oftentimes is more interested in giving answers than asking questions. We have the answer. The answer is Jesus. What do we do in the community? We hold a church service so that we can tell people about Jesus. Some people are really creative and they try to make a cool church service, but it's still, hey, come to us and we'll give you Jesus. We want to give out good doctrine. We want to tell people how they're supposed to behave. We want to give people answers, but we really need to take time to ask questions. How can I help? How can I make your life a little bit better? Especially to the marginalized, especially to the least of these. That is what the church should be. It's what the church could be. And when I say church, the church is people. So I'm not just meaning the church as a whole. I'm not just meaning the church as an organization. What I'm talking about is the community of believers, which includes you. But the fact is, the cool thing is, you don't need to be a Christian to do this stuff. Anybody could ask these questions. How can I make the world a better place? At least for my neighbors. In a world where everyone has the answer, maybe we should ask the question. Now, I'm probably going to get these numbers wrong, and I didn't really care enough to look them up, but I remember hearing that Jesus was asked point blank specific questions, like 60, 70 times. Of all those questions that he was asked directly, he only answered 7 of them directly. Most of the time he pulled a Zoolander, said, well, let me answer that question with another question, But a lot of times, hey, Jesus, what about this? And he'd say, well, let me tell you a story. How come we're so interested in giving people answers instead of asking them questions? When someone asks a question about, where am I going to go when I die? Why don't we ask the question, well, where are you going to go when you leave here? Are you going to go home to a bad situation? Are you going to go to a place that's hell on earth? Why don't we ask those questions? It's not that we can't ask the others, but these are important questions. And those questions led my wife and I to do something for the people in our community that was really cool. So I'd just like to invite you in the comments, just say something that you could do to make your community a better place. Say something that you could bring up to your church about doing that could make your world a better place. Even think about the bigger picture. What can your church do to help the wars, the famines, the starvation, the diseases? Ask the questions. And I think they'll lead you to the right place. Ask the questions in the comments and we'll have a conversation. And who knows, maybe this video can change your direction. I know asking these questions has changed mine. And I know that all these stories have just led me to a place where I can say with all honesty, Rev loves you.